Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Niccolò Rising by Dorothy Dunnett, narrated by John Banks.
Chapter 1. From Venice to Cathay, from Seville to the Gold Coast of Africa, men anchored their ships and opened their ledgers and weighed one thing against another as if nothing would change. Or as if there existed no sort of fool of either sex who might one day treat trade as an amusement. It began mildly enough, the awkward chain of events that was to upset the bankers so much. It began with sea and September sunlight, and 3 young men lying stripped to their doublets in the Duke of Burgundy's bath. Of the 3, Klaas and Felix were watching the canal bank for girls. Julius, his instincts blunted by an extra decade, was content to sink back, agreeably fortified, and forget he was anyone's tutor. A good astrologer would have told him to get out at once. The sun warmed the bath, and the water bore it along on the last stage of its meandering journey. From the lead founders in England, it had crossed the narrow sea to the Low Countries in a serviceable wind-battered caravel. It had been unloaded with some trouble in the crowded harbour at Sluis, and strapped with some trouble athwart a canal boat with a scratch crew of oarsmen. And now, here it was, lumped with cherubs, a bath for the noble Philip, Duke of Burgundy, Count of Flanders, Margrave of the Holy Roman Empire, and all the rest of his high-yielding honours. A communal bathing basin now on its way to the Duke's occasional residence in the merchant city of Bruges, and working their passage inside it, Julius, Felix, and Klaas. For the moment, there was nothing to do. In the peace, a wave of philosophy overcame Julius. "What," he said, "is happiness?" He opened his eyes. "A new hound," said Felix, who was 17. His crossbow lay on the points of his pelvis, and his rat-like nose was red with the sun. "The kind with big ears." Julius curled a lip without malice. So much for Felix. He turned his gaze towards Klaas, who was 18 and built like an oak tree with dimples. "A new girl," offered Klaas. He jerked open the wine flask, gripping the neck like the hock of a stallion. "The kind with—" "That's enough," Julius said. Philosophy was wasted on both of them. Everything was wasted on Klaas. Julius was sometimes glad that civilization had reached the advanced stage it had, so that it could stand up to Klaas. The Greeks would have gone back to tents. Klaas looked at him, pained. He said, "I've only had—" Beside him, young Felix was grinning. Julius said, "Drink! Drink! I said that's enough about girls. Forget I said anything." "All right," said Klaas, surprised. He drank. He inhaled. His nostrils were indigo blue. He said, "This is nice." Julius refrained from agreeing. A dye-shop apprentice would find any change nice. Felix, his charge, his employer's son, his daily burden, had enjoyed the day's rabbiting, but didn't deserve to. Only he, Julius, had left his cares in the dye-shop and had a right for one day to indulge himself. The canal banks glided past. The lightermen bickered companionably and dropped into snatches of song as they paddled. The sun-warmed cherubim lodged 3 indolent heads, cheek by jowl round the bath-rim. Julius found the wine-flask in his hand and eclipsed the whole sun with its bottom. A conscientious youth, yet with a troublesome lightness of character. So they had assessed him, while he was earning his scroll at Bologna. God take all law schools. This is Flanders, not Italy. You volunteer to unload a bath from a ship. Accept a lift in the bath, back to your place of residence and employment. You close your eyes, the better to ponder. Where is the lightness in that? Julius, notary to the Charetti family, closed his eyes. Almost at once, so it seemed, he endured a nasty blow to his ribs. Half awake, he flung out a fist in return. He hit something. "Hey!" said Felix, and, his face flushed, made to kick him again. Julius rolled over, escaping the foot. The sound of rushing water told him why Felix had wakened him. They were approaching the lock. Felix's voice was continuing, monumentally resonant because of the bath. "You've knocked my hat off," boomed Felix. "You've broken the feather." The lighterman, steering up to the lock, glanced round appreciatively, and so did Klaas, who had got up to help them. The truth was, it was hard to hit Felix and avoid hitting his headgear. This one had a peak and a long pointed brim like a paper boat. Its osprey feather curled, broken-backed on the rabbit bag. Where the hat had been, Felix's brown hair was sweaty and flat, and his curls had sagged into corkscrews. He looked furious. Klaas said, "You said you were tired of the feather. It's time for the beer, Mr. Julius." Klaas had been with a charretti since he was 10, and being a family byblow, he got to speak that way to Felix. Through the years, Klaas had become not only an apprentice, but a kind of servant companion to the charretti heir. Felix tried to batter Klaas regularly, but mostly put up with him. Felix's mother, thankful for peace, let Klaas off his dye shop duties whenever Felix demanded it. Julius, equally thankful, hoped that Klaas's spasmodic apprenticeship would last long enough to see Felix into maturity, if not old age and burial. Julius, an easy-going sort of man, had nothing much against Jonkheer Felix. He could control him. Klaas, of course, had no writ to control anyone, which was why he got beaten so freely. It made him very helpful. Julius watched Klaas give a last shove with his oar, put it down, and then walk round the end of the boat and hand Felix his hat. All anyone remembered of Klaas was his size and the dents in his cheeks and his helpfulness, and that nothing female under 20 was safe from his endeavours. Julius could see his mouth opening and shutting outside the bath, and hear Felix booming back from within. Julius didn't join the discussion, which was on the usual subject. Of course, he liked watching a good-looking woman. He had his share of vanity. He knew his sort of looks drew attention. He had had to extract himself more than once from some developing situation with a client's young wife. It was not either that he contemplated taking holy orders, or not up to the present. But if a good chance came along, a man ought to be ready. He was moderate. He didn't raven, like Klaas, or yearn like poor Felix when brought to sail the canalized river between Sluis and Damme, passing 3 miles of ankles and a handful of knees, if you were lucky. Accessible ankles, what's more. You didn't find grand ladies with steeple headdresses and shaved brows and pearls on their slippers among the quays and sheds and warehouses and pens and tie-posts of the 2 ports of Bruges. You got pertly laundered white caps and slyly hitched work gowns. Enough of them to please even Klaas, Julius thought. The liveliest girls called down to one youth or the other. Men sang out too, and boys ran alongside, keeping up with the rowers. One tossed a pebble into the bath, and it chimed like the tongue of a church bell. The tongue of the thrower soon drowned it, as his father hurriedly thrashed him. Even from Brussels, or Dijon, or Lille, Duke Philip could hear things. Klaas stayed on his feet beside Felix. Felix was signalling masterfully with his hat, from which Klaas had adopted the feather. 3 feet long, it waved from its thatch like a fishing line. On the other side of the boat, Julius helped throw up the ropes at the sea-lock, and heaved up the statutory can of Bruges beer to the lock-keeper. The man looked at him twice before naming him. Without the gown, he wasn't Mr. Julius, the notary. He was just another young pest in his 20s. In his more sober moments, Julius was aware that exploits such as these were unseemly. In his less sober moments, he refused to be bothered. The lock-keeper had no trouble recognizing Felix or Klaas. Everyone in Bruges and Louvain knew the charretti heir and his slavish attendant. There were no other craft in the lock, another mark of the power of the Duke. The lighter entered, and behind it the tidal gates waded, creaking together. The lock-keeper, stowing his beer, walked off to open the sluices. Perched high on the water, Julius looked ahead, beyond the shut wooden gates, to where the canal ran.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?